Hi, this is Ron Darling.
This is Skip Lockwood.
Hi, I'm Ron Swoboda of the 69 New York Mets, and you're listening to Mets Musings with Gary Mack.
Now it's time for some New York Mets baseball talk. Here's Gary Mack bringing you the latest news and analysis from Mets Nation and the world of baseball on another edition of Mets Musings.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mets Musings. I'm your host, Gary Mack, and I'm joined this week by an excellent site editor, managing editor, Max Rieper of the Royals Review, and he's joining us. And Max, welcome to Mets Musings.
Thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it. It's great to be on.
And I figured we could break down the Royals a little bit and get a little taste of what the Mets might expect this weekend, upcoming weekend. So the Royals made a lot of moves in the offseason to bolster their team, of course, much like the Mets did. You want to just throw a couple out there and what we should be looking for?
Yeah, so this is a team that lost 106 games last year, so plenty of room for upgrades, particularly on the pitching side. They had the third worst ERA in baseball last year. They've really struggled developing pitching over the years. They were counting on some young guys to take a step forward, and really no one did. So they went out this offseason and acquired a bunch of veteran free agent pitchers. Seth Lugo, former Met, was one of them. I think they're probably the big free agent pitcher they got this year. He's a guy that they tried to get a year ago, but he ended up going to the Padres and opted out of his deal and became a free agent a year later. So the Royals seized on him. So he's a nice innings eater, or a guy that can give you 6 solid innings, throws strikes, which is something they really struggled with last year. Good ground ball rate, so a good addition to that rotation. Michael Wacha, they also added this year. Again, it's kind of similar profile, a guy that can go out there, give you 5-6 good innings, a veteran who's been out there, knows what he's doing. And then they upgraded the bullpen by adding Will Smith, who has pitched for the last 3 world champions, 3 different teams, but a guy that's kind of been around. Actually was a Royals minor leaguer at one point, but he's had a nice decade-long career as a reliever. He's there to stabilize that bullpen a little bit. They picked up Chris Stratton, veteran reliever who pitched for the Cardinals and Rangers last year, to kind of be a middle reliever. And then they went out and acquired Nick Anderson from the Braves, certainly a guy that's a big strikeout rates, but has had trouble staying healthy over the last couple of years. But he's going to be in that mix as well in the middle innings. So, they spent a good chunk of change. I think over $100 million for all those guys. Now, some of them have opt-outs, very flexible deals that, if Lugo pitches well, he can get out of that deal early. But the ownership was committed to improving the team, getting a better pitching staff out there. And they said, frankly, we're not going to sit around and wait for guys to develop anymore. So guys like Daniel Lynch, who have been in the rotation, they've kind of waited for him to develop, and he hasn't really turned the corner. They're kind of moving on from him. If he pitches well, great. If he gets an opportunity, but they're not going to sit around and wait for him anymore. So they're going to go with these veterans. Wacha and Lugo are going to be fitting that rotation with Cole Reagans, who was fantastic over the last 2 months last year after they acquired him from the Rangers for Aroldis Chapman. Brady Singer, who was terrific in 2022, but really regressed badly last year. And then Alec Marsh, who's a rookie who came on at the end of last year, had some mixed results, didn't really look that great, but they feel like he can improve this year. So that gives them a much more solid rotation than the last couple of years, where it's just been let's have a lot of question marks and see what happens.
Well, you mentioned, of course, Seth Lugo, the ex-Met. We know a lot about him here. Really, it's kind of an amazing story with him, because apparently, I don't know how his medical history is, but what you guys know about it. But apparently, he still got a torn Tommy John tendon there, for lack of a better term, that I think that's one of the reasons why the Mets didn't sign him when when he originally left for free agency. That and the fact that he wanted to be a starter again, and they thought he was more suited for the bullpen. But we could have used him the last couple of years in our rotation. But how is Seth's health? It's very early in the season, but through spring training and any issues at all with the right arm?
He's looked good so far, but I think you raise a good point. I mean, he's a guy that hasn't, done pitched 180 innings or anything like 100 anything
Yeah,
close to that really in his
yeah.
career. So he's been a reliever or a swing man most of his career. Last year with the
Hmm.
Padres, he got a chance to start more. But he's still only threw I think 140 innings last year. So he's gonna be asked to do a lot more this year, ramp it up to like 160 innings or so this year. And we'll see how his arm reacts to that. He's what in his mid 30s, 33 years old or something like that.
Yeah, something.
That's a concern. And same with Waka. Waka is a guy that hasn't, he had some injury concerns last year as well. I think they're about 140 innings. So can he withstand a full season of starting again at his age? We'll have to see. And the Royals, they got these guys by saying you can start for a guy like Lugo. We'll give you starts because we have starts to give, and also overcommitting money. I mean, the Royals gave him 3 years, $45 million, which frankly a lot of teams weren't willing to do. They probably wanted to give him 1 or 2 years, knowing his injury past and his lack of experience starting. So when you're a bad team, you kind of have to overpay a little bit to lure guys to your team. So it's early. They look good so far and they're healthy so far, but we've seen a rash of pitcher injuries around baseball,
Yeah.
and the Royals. I think they know that, and they know they need to build some depth, and they do have some options with younger players. If these guys get hurt, like I said, Daniel Lynch has started the last couple of years. They still think there's some potential there. Chris Bubich is a left-hander who started the last couple of years, but had Tommy John surgery. He's supposed to come back by midseason. But they really need these starters to kind of stay healthy and deliver because there's a lot of unprovens after that.
And like you say, that is a big trend throughout baseball with pitchers getting hurt. And depth is a big issue. I mean, we've already lost one of our starters here, or two actually. One never even got out of spring training yet. Kodai Senga, he got hurt in spring training, so he's still down there recuperating. And Tyler McGill got hurt after two starts, I think it was, or his first start. So he's out for 15 days. So there is a lot of injuries to pitchers again. And I don't know if it's the weather, because the weather's been cold in a lot of these places. I still don't understand why they don't make it the first few weeks smarter scheduling. There are enough dome stadiums. There are enough warm weather stadiums to have teams from our part of the Midwest and the Northeast play there to start the season, than rather than having to go in a 40-degree weather and throw a baseball 100 miles an hour. I mean, it's just but that's another story, I guess, for another day.
I've been to my fair share of freezing opening days, so
Yeah.
I.
I said I haven't been to a couple of years to a game because of the whole COVID thing, and I'm in that old age category, so I've got to watch it with that. But I said to the wife, I said, the next time I go to a game, I want to go in the middle of August when it's like 100 degrees, because the last 4 or 5 years when I went, it seemed I always went on a freezing cold, the second game of the season, the opening day, whatever. I always froze. So I said, no, I gotta go to a warm game once more.
Well, I
But
wouldn't
now the
recommend
Roy,
coming to Kansas City in August. I think it's going to be unbearably hot that time of year. So you got to find a little more temperate climate.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. I had some friends that went, and I think it was in July they went, and they said too it was really hot there, but they had a good time, so that's the main thing. Now the Royals also improved their bench and their catching situation. Talk a little bit about the starting lineup for them and position players and who's what and where. I know their longtime second baseman, whose name escapes me. that he left or he was traded.
Oh, Whit Merrifield, yeah, Whit
Yeah,
Merrifield,
yeah.
he left. He
So
was traded a year
how did
ago.
they replace him, and what's going on?
Yeah, so they have a core of a young lineup. So they're kind of they've had this perpetual rebuilding movement, and they feel like they have a core of young hitters they can kind of pin their hopes on. Obviously, the big star is Bobby Witt Jr. And you talk about off-season moves. The biggest move they made this offseason was signing him to a long-term deal,
Right.
at least 7 years, could be up to 11 years, could be up to like $200. But they solidify the future by having him at shortstop. And last year, he started out slow, but by the end of the year, he's one of the best hitters in baseball. I think
Yeah,
finished
yeah.
seventh in MVP voting, 30-30 season. So he really had a nice breakout season and is going to be the kind of the pace setter in that lineup. Really, and he's off to a great start this year. I mean, he just is stinging the ball. I think he leads the league in barrels, and he's showing great speed. His defense saved a run last night that won the game for them. So he's just a tremendous all-around player.
And he's young, right? He's still young, right?
Very young. Yeah. He's 24, 23, 24 years
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
So yeah, he's just entering his prime. But he gives that Royals that dynamic power speed blend with good defense as well. Now the question is, can you put a good lineup around him, right? And they're hoping some of these young guys that have, had flashes of brilliance but haven't been put together can be a little more consistent. So a guy like MJ Melendez, who is a former catcher turned outfielder, has hit the ball hard, but hasn't had a lot of results so far. His power hasn't developed as they'd like. Has a good eye, draws some walks, but hasn't really hit for the average they want. He's off to a really good start this year, and we're hopeful he can kind of be that guy that hits behind Bobby Witt Jr. and gives him some protection. Vinny Pasquantino, as a first baseman who provides great power, draws a lot of walks, hardly ever strikes out for a power hitter. He looked really good until he got hurt last year with an elbow injury, missed the rest of the season. So he's struggled this year to begin this year. I don't know if that's the elbow bothering him or if he's just rusty. But he has yet to get an extra base hit. So they really need to get him going if they want any kind of offense. Because this is not a team that, they were near the bottom of the league in offense last year, and they're probably not going to be top, in the top half or anything like that. But if they get the pitching they've gotten, the lineup just needs to be okay. So they really need to get him going. And then the rest is kind of, question marks and a couple, journeymen. Salvador Perez is still there. You guys remember him from the 2015 World Series, multiple All-Star appearances. His offense has dropped off a little bit, but, he had the game-winning hit last night. He's off to a pretty good start. Still hits for power, won't ever walk. He'll swing at anything near the plate, which I don't know why he ever gets the fastball anywhere near the strike zone. I would just give him sliders off the plate every time and see if he fishes for it. But he's still hitting all right, and he still gives him some power behind the plate. So he's a behind the plate. And then Mike Garcia is kind of an interesting third baseman. He's naturally a shortstop, but they moved him to third. Bobby Witt's so good, and he's provided great defense at third. And you were just hoping, okay, just be okay with the offense.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, I'm great." So he went out and had a great winter league season in Venezuela. His power really developed. He's got a good eye at the plate, doesn't swing at bad pitches, and he's off to a great start, stinging the ball every single time he's up there. So if he can be an even average offensive player, he can be a very valuable player who can steal bases for you, run the bases well, and provide great defense. So I really like the start he's off to. The rest is kind of guys we hope will be okay. Hunter Renfroe was signed as a free agent this offseason to a 2-year, $14 million deal. I mean, he's got some power, 20 home run power, but he's clearly in the twilight of his career. I don't know that we're expecting. He's got off to a terrible start too, so I don't know that we're expecting a whole lot from him. Kyle Isbell in center field is a defense first center fielder who, he's hit okay to start the year, but I don't think they're expecting much offense from him.
Mm-hmm.
And at second base, Michael Massey's been the replacement for Whit Merrifield at second, but he's hurt right now. I don't know if they're expecting him back. I don't think he's going to be back by the time the Mets, the Royals play the Mets. So Adam Frazier, the longtime veteran with the Pirates and Orioles, he's filling in at second base and hasn't really played particularly well. So that's going to be a kind of a weak spot in the offense as well. Oh, and then Nelson Velasquez, a young hitter they picked up from Texas or from the Cubs last year, has tremendous power. Doesn't really do anything else, but he can hit some bombs. So hopefully he can get some moonshots and help that offense a little bit.
Now you mentioned Salvador Perez, of course, and he's been traded about, I guess, in the last 5 years, he's been traded in everybody's head about 15 times to different teams. It seems he's always gonna be traded, and then the Royals never trade him. Any chance that this may be the year, or do you think he's just a fixture there and just ride him out, like the Cardinals did and other teams do with their catches, because he is so good, he's so connected to the community, and why make a move like that when you got some guy that wants to be there, happy there, and just let him be?
Yeah, I think last summer was the most smoke we've seen about him getting traded. There was a lot of talk at the deadline that the Marlins were interested, and he has a home in Miami, and he's got, 10-5 veto right, so he can block any deal.
Hmm.
But since he
Yeah.
lived there and the Miami was kind of a up and coming team at the time, there was thought that he might, accept a deal there. There's talk that he maybe the White Sox would want him in a deal because they've got so many ex-Royals. Their coach, their manager Pedro Gafal is a former Royals coach that Salvador Perez is really close to. A lot of the guys they've hired have Royals connections. But the deal wasn't done. And the fact that they are kind of building towards something now, I think makes me think they're going to hang on to Salvi. Um, First of all, we'll probably talk about this later, but the Royals are trying to get a new stadium from voters
Hmm.
in Kansas City. And so trading your franchise player, most popular player, even if it's the right baseball move, which I like, a lot of people would argue it is, since he has a large contract. He's clearly in the decline phase of his career. They've got a nice young catcher in Freddie Fermin who could fill in, or MJ Melendez could move back to catcher. But trading a guy who's a multiple-time All-Star, potential Hall of Fame, at least candidate, is probably not going to be very popular with voters that you're asking from to approve a stadium from.
Yeah.
So, I think I think they do see value now in having veterans around some of these younger guys, teaching them how to play the game. And I think that gets overblown a little bit, but there is definitely value to that. And so I think a deal is much less likely now than it was maybe last summer. And they're off to a good start too. I think they see, like, they may not be in it contention all year, but I think if they take a big step forward, they want to have Salvi around for that to be kind of part of showing these young guys how to win. So I don't think a deal is going to happen at this point. Like I said, he can block any deal anyway. But I think Salvi's probably got a place in this lineup for as long as he wants it.
And can you believe it's been 9 years since the World Championship that we don't want to talk about very loud? But
I love talking about it. Yeah, if you want to talk about it.
but it just seemed to have gone so quickly, and when you think back already to some of those guys on their team, then and especially your team, I mean, everybody's gone just about it, if not everybody.
Yeah, I think
And
Salvi's the only active
is
player from that
probably
Royals team. Hosmer just retired. Moustakas didn't make the White Sox team out of spring training, so I mean he may still be trying to play, but he's not on a team. Danny Duffy is in the minors for the Rangers, and I think that's it. I think everyone else is retired or out of baseball by now. It's kind of amazing. I don't know
boy,
the
oh
Mets.
boy.
I know Matt Harvey ran through here, a couple years back. I think he's
Yeah.
pretty much done.
I don't think there's anybody. I think the longest tenure guy is Drew Smith, and he wasn't around
Yeah,
then.
Thor pitched last year, but I don't think he's with the team now, right?
Yeah, no, he's I don't know where he was with the Angels and the Dodgers last year, I
Yeah,
think, and yeah, and
time
I
flies,
don't
man.
think he's pitching. Wow, it
Yeah.
does. It's incredible, but we hope for a good season. Like you said, the Royals have started off at 7-4 as we record this on Wednesday. So they are off to a good start. What is your prediction in the it seems that both central divisions, the NL Central and the AL Central, are really crazy divisions. I mean, we could possibly see a team with a 500, slightly better than 500 team win both of those central divisions. Where do you put the Royals at this particular time? I mean, I think Detroit right now is in the lead. Cleveland is in first, I believe.
Yeah, Cleveland.
Detroit may be second. Kansas City's currently at third. very early in the season. But where do you see the Royals ending up in that division, and about how many wins did you predict for them before the season started?
Yeah, before the season started, I had them at about 74, 75 wins just because, they lost 106 games and you just don't go from 106 losses to a winning season usually. I mean, it's happened, but
It's happened. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
big jump to make and it'd be pretty rare. But I mean, they looked really good. I mean, they're 7-4 and two of those games they lost against the Orioles could have been wins if they had had a better bullpen. They had Will Smith begin the year as closer, and he looked pretty shaky and blew a couple leads early on. And if they've already kind of moved on to James MacArthur as their closer, who's looked pretty good his first couple opportunities. If they have a better ninth innings in those games, they could be 9-2 at this point. So yeah, but they're going to have issues in the bullpen. I think it's not a top half bullpen for sure. And the starting pitching has been kind of unsustainably good. I think it's been the best starting pitching in the baseball, which it'll be good, but I don't think it'll be that good. I think the Braves and
Yeah.
some other teams have, the Rays and the Orioles have something to say about that. But yeah, they've got off to a great start. So, I think we may have to revise those predictions up a little bit where, they're a 77, 78 win team. And if they get a few lucky breaks and maybe they're in it in July and they're like, hey, let's go out and make a move and get another piece. Maybe that pushes them up to a team that has a winning record. And
Hmm.
I think if you have like 82, 83 wins in the Central Division, you're going to be in it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if any team's going to break away. I think the Twins are still the class of the division, but they didn't add anyone really to the team this year. They
Hmm.
just subtracted, hoping that some younger guys would kind of fill those gaps. The Guardians, I think, have a pretty lackluster offense with a lot of young but talented starting pitchers that we don't know about. And the Detroit's kind of in the same boat as the Royals. They're kind of a lot of young guys, a couple free agents to supplement them, but they're kind of hoping that the young guys can carry them and take them to the next level. So we'll see. I think it'll be a pretty competitive division. Certainly not a division where a lot of teams are really good, but it's going to be close. There's going to be a
Right.
race there, and there's no reason why the Royals can't at least be in the mix and have something for Royals fans to cheer about through the summer, which is not something we've really had since Hosmer and Moustakas and those guys were in town.
Hmm. It's strange. It seems to be a trend now with the throughout baseball where there's a lot of parallel teams. The Mets are very similar to the Royals this year. I mean, last year they went out and spent all that money, got Verlander and Scherzer and all of those guys. It didn't pay off. Traded them off, got some highly touted prospects, and now that seems to be the way that they're going. They filled in this year, and they practically told everybody that they may not be that great this year, but they were going to try to contend, but that they weren't going out and getting the best free agents, the Blake Snell and Otani and stuff. Although they said they were in on Otani, but I don't think anybody was in on Otani except for the Dodgers all the way. Anyway, my point being that it seems like a lot of teams are in that move now towards the farm systems. Watching baseball many years as I have, it's just amazing how the trends come and go and how the teams move with it, and get into it. Because the Mets really, they had to fill out their roster and their pitching. They lost most of their pitching staff, and they had to fill in with guys, and they signed Hunter Bather and guys like that, traded for Tyrone Taylor and Austin Hauser, and but they're trying to get young as well. So that seems to be the trend throughout baseball.
Yeah, I think youth is king, particularly in baseball. Right now. I mean, number one, they're cheaper, right? I mean, a lot of these teams are
Yeah,
cost conscious.
yeah.
You don't have to pay these guys as much. And number two, like these are guys that are kind of on the ascend. They're players that are hopefully getting better. And I think when you rely on a lot of young guys, there's a greater variation in like how good your team's going to be. Like the Royals have a lot of young guys, and if those young guys kind of reach their potential, they could be a 82, 84 win team. And if they don't, they're probably gonna be like a 72 win team, 70,
Mm.
72 win team. Like there's a high variability of how they'll be because just you don't know with these young guys. They don't have a proven track record. So I mean,
Right.
on the one hand, you don't know what you're going to get, but on the other hand, that gives a lot of hope to fans. Are like, well, this, you can kind of like project, oh, this guy's going to be the next whatever, like,
Yeah.
oftentimes you're going to get your heart broken, especially with the pitchers because they're going to get hurt. But yeah, I think in Kansas City we're pretty used to it. What we're not used to is having a lot of these guys pan out because we've seen a lot of rebuilds that just didn't pan out.
Yeah.
Obviously the Hosmer Moustakis guys did. That was one of the rare times where it all kind of clicked in place. So we're hoping that with this new regime, JJ Piccolo's the general manager, he's been on the job as the head guy for a year now, and it seems like he has the team kind of headed in the right direction. So fingers crossed here in Kansas City. Certainly they're off to a good start for a change.
Yeah, and let's hope for a good series. The pitching matchups for this weekend are a little sparse. The information on it, from what I've been able to gather, it looks like it's going to be Sean Manaea on. This is for the Mets, of course. Sean Manaea on Friday, Jose Butto on Saturday, and to be determined for Sunday. My guess it might be Jose Quintana. I don't know if he's gonna pitch before that, but if he does, it could be Severino. I don't know who's pitching tonight. I have to check. But how about from the Royals' point of view? Do you know whom the matchup might be?
Yeah, I don't know why they're being coy about it, but Michael Waka, it would be his turn in the rotation. He'd start the opener against Manai, who Manaea has pitched well, if I'm not
Pitched
mistaken. He's a
very
guy
well.
I really
Yeah.
liked. Yeah, I really liked him in free agency. Kind of wanted the Royals
Yeah.
to bring him back. He was originally drafted by the Royals, was traded
Right.
for Ben
Right.
Zobrist in 2015 when they made their run. But always a guy I've liked his stuff for a long time. If he can stay healthy, I think he's a solid pitcher. So Manaea versus Walker, I think will be a really good pitching matchup. Saturday, the Royals have Alec Marsh, who, like I said, had mixed results last year. Has trouble with the long ball quite a bit and had trouble throwing strikes, but looked really sharp in his first couple starts, particularly against a tough Orioles lineup. So perhaps he's figured something out. He has a really deep arsenal where he throws a lot of different pitches and has been throwing a little bit harder this year. So hopefully he's a guy that can, like I said, with these young guys, you don't know what you're going to get, and hopefully
Hmm.
he's going to come out improved. And then Sunday will be really interesting. Cole Reagans, like I said, he pitched great. He's by wins above replacement. He was the best pitcher in baseball over the last 2 months of last season, and has looked really good in his first couple starts this year. Was hit around a little bit last night against the Astros. Gave up 10 hits, but only 3 runs in 5 innings of work. That was his worst start of the year. He's pitched a lot better other than that. So that'll be a real treat. So I think pretty good pitching matchups, I think, for the series. And I think it'll be a good one. A nice, if nothing else, it'll give us some nostalgia for 2015.
Yeah, that's true. And they used to play, they did play a few games at City Field, some of these guys, and Waka as well, because he's actually a former Met as well, if
Oh,
I
that's right.
remember
Yeah.
correctly. So yeah, it should be an interesting series. Let's talk briefly about the uh my head here. Kaufman Stadium is always a nice stadium, and I never thought that they would want to replace it, but there is talk, and in fact, they've put out renditions or renderings of a new stadium. What's the current status on that?
Yeah, so the team has a new owner in 20, I think 19. They got sold to John Sherman, who's a Kansas City. He's in the energy field, but he's a Kansas City, and a lot of local owners as well. Patrick Mahomes is in the ownership group, so he's been a big downtown Kansas City booster, and so in the last year and a half, he's been pushing for a new stadium downtown Kansas City to not only help downtown and revitalize areas that need it, but to give the Royals a new source of revenue. As you probably noticed around baseball, all these teams are building ballpark districts around where they can have
Hmm.
restaurants and hotels and
Yeah.
offices and housing to make more money. As if the ticket price wasn't enough and the TV deals. But they say we need it to keep up with other teams, so we don't have to be a poor team anymore. It when the team is locked into a lease right now through 2030 at Kauffman Stadium. but they want to get out of that early and start building a new stadium. So they had a referendum a couple weeks, I guess last week, in Jackson County to ask voters to extend the sales tax that they currently pay, that are paying the renovations that they made 20 years ago, and say, hey, can we use it to build a new stadium? Voters pretty resoundingly rejected that, even though it
Wow.
included money for the Chiefs too. The Chiefs want to renovate their football stadium, and voters said, no, I don't. That's not a good deal. It had there's a lot of concerns. Number one, they don't have the specifics on the deal. Like they said, well, we'll use a third of this money for the stadium, and they wouldn't say what the rest, how they pay for the rest of it. Probably from the state
Right.
of Missouri, probably from the city of Kansas City, probably maybe some from the team, but they weren't very specific about that. So a lot of people didn't
Right.
like the lack of specifics. A lot of people like Kauffman Stadium. They don't want the team to move at all. I don't think the team is pretty clear. They don't want to stay beyond 2030. Um, they cite that the renovations at this point to completely redo the stadium would cost as much as it would to build a new stadium. A lot of people don't believe that, but that's their claim. And so some people didn't vote for that reason. Some people were angry that the team was going to build it in an area where a lot of businesses would be displaced.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of anger about the issue. It's polarized a lot of people. So we'll have to see now that it's been rejected whether or not the team comes back and says, okay, let's come up with another solution in Kansas City, or there was a proposal to build a stadium across the river in another county. It's still it's in North Kansas City, so that could be an opportunity. Or they can move across the state line to Kansas, where Kansas is all too ready to give them all sorts of state incentives to have their own team. That's a possibility. I think the long shot right now, and I know people are concerned about it, but they can move somewhere else, right? Nashville wants a team. Salt Lake City is trying to build a stadium now. That I think we're nowhere near that point right now. Sherman's at Kansas City. He's going to keep the team, I think, here, as much as he can.
Right.
But it's a little bit up in the air now what the future of this franchise is, where they'll play in 6-7 years.
And finally, let's talk a little bit about the new uniforms. The Royals got caught. They were using the large letters, and Major League Baseball made them change. I personally, I think it's stupid. These letters are so ridiculous. They look so cheap. It just cheapens the whole. The Major League's supposed to have the best, and to me, and like I said, I'm not a young man anymore, so sometimes the names being bigger are a big help to me. So
Well, it's funny. You see a player, like you see a fan getting an autograph from a player, and the fan will be wearing like the old jersey, and the player will be wearing the new ones. And the fan looks like they have the authentic, and the player looks like they have the replica jersey on.
yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah, they look ridiculous. I don't know who thought this was a good idea, and I know they said, "Oh, it's player comfort, and this is easier to breathe." Have you seen the players sweat through the things? Like it just looks
Yeah,
like it's see through, and it's like sweat's drenched all over them. It doesn't seem comfortable at all. When the Tigers had a player, he slid, and the pants just ripped down the seam. I mean, it's an embarrassment. It seems like
it
Major
really.
League Baseball is playing with knockoff uniforms from China or something. And
I,
yeah, the Royals, they got a waiver in spring training for, I don't know why, baseball let them play in spring training with like real uniforms, and it looked great, and especially in comparison with their opponents. But then once the season started, I guess the Major League Baseball said, no, you got to go back to the other
yeah,
uniforms.
yeah.
So yeah,
It's
it
all
looks
the
ridiculous.
Nike thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the worst deal. They should have kept with Majestic. It was the worst thing going to Nike with then they put the swoosh on the uniform. That don't keep it on the sleeve. We
Yeah.
don't need that in the middle of the or on the chest of the uniform. That's for the logos and everything else. It's just like I said, I'm old school, so it kind of bothers me. But and they say it's because they can't put the big letters on because of the material would bunch up or something. And so do the old placards. Remember, I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
that when they
Yeah, I remember
used to
those.
do the
Yeah.
white placard for the home thing. and put the names on that, and then put that on. Go back to that, then maybe that would be better. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Well, Max, I want to thank you for we spoke a little bit longer than I said we might, but that always happens.
That's fine. I talk baseball all day, man. I appreciate it.
All right. And go ahead, plug whatever you want. Plug your site and podcast, whatever you got.
Yeah, if you ever want to follow the Royals, it's royalsreview.com, part of the SB Nation of network of blogs, and it's a great little community. We'll be nice to even fans of other teams if you're respectful to us. So we welcome anyone to come by and offer comments on the upcoming series against the Mets.
Okay. And thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. And good luck this weekend. I mean, it should be, I think we'll get two evenly matched teams, and we'll see where they're going with each other.
Yeah, it's just nice to have a competitive Royals team. We don't have to feel like we're going to get blown out before every series.
Right,
So
right.
I know
this
a good series.
I know the feeling. All right, and I will be back right after this.
Baseball and BBQ, your place for interesting baseball talk, opinions, and history.
Baseball and BBQ, your place for barbecue recipes, tips, and interviews from the world of barbecue. If you like baseball and if you like barbecue, then tune in to Baseball and BBQ. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and BaseballTalkRadio.com.
We are back, and let's gonna give you some quick hits here, some quick news items. JD Martinez has back soreness. His delay at coming back to the Mets will be pushed back another week or so. Probably won't see him this weekend, probably be sometime next week. So that is not good news for the Mets. They were hoping to get him in the lineup. They played pretty well so far in Atlanta, so let's hope they can continue that and come away with at least a split of the series. In the minor leagues, we're not going to do a full-blown down on the farm, but in the minor leagues, Syracuse early on in the season is 4-5 record. The Binghamton Rumble Ponies are 2-3. The Brooklyn Cyclones are 1-3, and the St. Lucie Mets are 1-3 going into tonight's action. So that is all I have for this week. I hope you enjoyed the preview with Max Rieper, and go check out his site, Royals Review. It's a very good site, and you'll get a lot of information about the Royals if you're interested in that sort of thing. But go check it out. And we will be back next week with another edition of Mets Musings. So until then, remember, keep the faith, stay optimistic, and let's go Mets. And I'll see you next time.